most targeted people, right? The DoD, they want to know what the secrets are. They want to know where our weapons are. They want to know where our supply routes are. You know, Anheuser-Busch, I'm sure they want to know the recipe for Budweiser. But it's not necessarily as important to national security. But those standards are being worked, and it's an evolution right now.
So to what extent from this slide do you have like 260-ish individual silos, all kind of, you know, maybe adhering to some sort of standard, but going through some long bureaucratic process to do it, versus something that is, you know, since you're getting attacked all over the place, that is, you know, really set up to be much more real-time, you know, machine learning or whatever to, you know, continually improve? I'm guessing it's more of the former than the latter,
Well,
but I'm wondering if you're actually
I'd like to say,
heading more to the latter.
I'd like to say there's some really good things going on there, but when I go to my guys and they say, hey, I want to stand up a cyber educational program, you know, what are the things, what are the standard tool sets that I need to use that the DoD is using across as a platform? I don't get a straight answer. You know, it's a conglomeration of customized tool sets, which creates a problem in these silos, right? Because now those aren't necessarily being shared across the board. So how does that all come together? What are there's just really no great tools, there's no great things, because those threats change every day.
So if I could rephrase it a little bit, it seems that because the, you know, things associated with the DoD are really good targets, you know, everybody wants to get them, you're getting a lot of activity, doesn't that present a really good opportunity also for if things are set up right? Because you have this huge test bed, and you've got the best and the brightest all over the world, you know, trying to get in. So is there any other better way to improve security than using that as a test bed? Maybe I'm being naive.
It's funny you say test bed. I think about the OPM breach. You know, my wife, myself, we have security clearances. You know, our information's on the web somewhere right now. I got the letter a couple months ago. You would think that yes, we could, you know, in an agile term, crash to the scene and basically come up with a solution set based on the threats that we're facing every day. I haven't seen that yet. That's all I can say, is I haven't seen that coordinated effort yet. Now I will say though, and I have a slide coming up, I think President Obama, and you know, he's the president, but I think he made a really significant gesture 2 days ago when he announced what he thought the 2017 budget should look like, and in that he put in funding in place. And I think we're moving towards being able to start doing those types of things.
I was just wondering how easy it would be to even bound your definitions or your end goals or end game, just because of the ever-present dynamic. It's always changing, it's always dynamic, and so it seems really difficult at the end of the day.
Right, and so how do you hit a moving target, right?
Bingo.
Right.
I mean, maybe it is, maybe if you do look in some short history, maybe there are trajectories and trends, I don't know.
Well,
it just seems like cyber, that's the complexity of cyber.
As a developer of software, I can tell you I never really worried about someone hacking me to a certain extent. You know, there's standards in place, patterns in place. I made sure I didn't do, you know, inline SQL and things like that. I mean, those are just the kind of you don't want to look like a fool. But at the same time, there is a lot of things in the code base in the DoD, I can guarantee you, because I look at it every day. The standards were never there. So the first thing we need to do is clean up the code base. Once we clean up the code base and you know what you have, and everything's kind of standardized and there's an acceptable risk known, you know, what are your parameters? I think that's where we move forward. But until we get the code base cleaned up, there's no way of combating it, because you can hit it any which way. I mean, heck, the OPM breach was allegedly Java 4 was in place. They didn't patch something on a Java 4 server. I mean, whether or not that's true or not, I mean, that's what I've read. That's just old technology, you know. We're on Java 8 now. I mean, you got to pay for the upgrades. It's not happening. You know, sequestration, whatever you want to call it. Money needs to be spent to get the stuff on an acceptable baseline. But
so that all makes sense to the Department of Defense, but what about small business? So I've heard it said, and I disagree with it completely, but someone said to me, oh, you don't have to worry about it as a small business because they're going after the big guys.
That's not true.
I don't think that's
Yeah,
true.
It's not true.
Yeah, so what does small business do?
So, you know-
Because we don't have the resources of a guy like you.
So,
Yeah?
so one of the interesting things I was thinking about, and I had maps and things like that I was going to show, and I was like, you know what, is this really going to translate very well? So I thought I'd just talk about it more than anything else. You know, we talk about these terrorist attacks, right, in France and so on and so forth. They hit soft targets, unexpected victims that don't really know what's going to happen. They don't know they're even targeted. It's an easy kill, you know, I hate to say it, but you know, that's what it is. There's no different than a cybersecurity soft target, right? So your mom and pop businesses, but the things I look at even more closely, which was going to be one of my examples, is let's just talk about Edward Jones, and I'm not saying that they're not secure or anything, but there's all these local branches all over the United States or in everybody's hometown. I mean, my town in Troy, Illinois has 3 Edward Jones guys. You know, they tie back to the server. You know, they push data up. They have personal information. You know, how are they securing those local branches? My doctor's office got hacked. How do we secure the local doctor's offices? You know, my doctor office was, you know, so-and-so doctor where I live, and they just had a subscription to a web service that managed their back end, their records, and that got hacked, and that, you know, I've been exposed. In fact, I've been so exposed by hacks, it doesn't even matter.
So what do you recommend for small business? So, you know, you talk to your people and they say, go to the cloud, you know, use the MS 365 or, you know, because it's Microsoft, they'll never go down. So now you've taken all your information and sent it up into heaven. And what do you recommend? I mean, what's the solution?
One of the things that we're starting to see is, so cost is obviously the issue, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, cost and security.
Well,
and
cost to
longevity.
get security, right? You can't afford to pay, you know, $300,000 to a guy to come in and just sit there all day and stare at your computer screens and try to determine if you're getting hacked. So what we're starting to see pop up throughout the United States, and we hope to see this with the Midwest Cyber Center of Excellence that we're starting up, is these, what they call like monitoring centers, for lack of a better term. And basically you just pay it like a service. It's no different than your credit monitoring. Is you just set up a monitoring service, you pay, I don't know, whatever it is, $1,500 a month or $500 a month or whatever the service is. And they take on the liability and they monitor your systems and network for patterns of hacking. And that's how we try to, we're going to have to drive down those costs to be able to deliver that service to the local small businesses. And that's something that's just kind of coming around now. Does that work?
No.
And Nick, how much does cyber hygiene play a part in defeating that this vulnerability for small business or anybody for that matter? Just doing things internal that need to be done, like patching or upgrading Java forward or Java whatever.
Well,
how much of that can we do?
So the one thing I really like about going to the cloud, if there was an advantage of that, is no longer does mom and pop have to have a computer on their desk, right? They can have a terminal, basically, you know, a very dumb computer. All those systems and everything move up to the cloud. You're paying somebody else to upgrade those servers. You're paying somebody else to maintain them. You're paying somebody else to secure the environment. You're moving all that liability off. It's you know, software as a service, hardware as a service, whatever you want to call it. That hygiene should be inherent to your move to the cloud. You shouldn't have to worry about patching Windows on your server, sitting in the back room in your closet, because you know you want to make sure you don't get hacked. Those are no longer as big of issues as they used to be when you do that. I mean, I'm on Office 365. When I came to Aegis, one of the first things I said is we should just be in the cloud because I don't want to manage all of that. I don't want to have to worry about that. Is it less secure? Probably, but it's better than me trying to keep up with all those patches.
So do you still keep a server in your closet to back it up on, or do you just rely on the cloud?
I just keep a server to look at it.
Okay.
Sometimes I use it as a step stool. No, we don't have any servers at Aegis. So I talked about Obama. So the president a couple days ago, in his 2017 budget, put $19 billion into cybersecurity. So if you're looking to build a business to take a piece of the action, there's $19 billion on the federal side. That could be had, I guess you could say. $3 billion of that was to replace outdated IT systems. So I do that every day. I'm in the middle of transitioning one of STDC's, or the Army's biggest system that is in charge of moving all of the cargo on the ground. I work on that system, and we're in the middle of a 4-year rewrite of the entire system with modern technologies. So we're already kind of ahead of the game, but that's what you're going to start seeing is all that stuff's going to be rewritten. There's going to be contracts galore to get these things up to snuff. So there's just a lot of opportunity there. But the good thing is it's out in front now. The government realizes what needs to be done, and they're putting that out in front. The next interesting thing will be is, well, how does commercial industry kind of pick up that torch and protect the other half of the United States? The Anheuser-Busch's, the Monsantos, the Edward Jones, the Stiefels, they all have their plans as well. It'll be interesting to see how that kind of ties together.
Question?
Yep.
Do you think for big software projects, the government is actually capable? I'm just thinking back to the healthcare IT system and all the hiccups, and the money spent, and there's other examples too. Just what's your opinion on that? And
So
obviously it needs to get happen, but is that best done in the private sector for the government, or should the government be running that in your opinion?
as a DoD contractor, I have to be a little careful because they're putting me on video. not to piss off an acquisition specialist, but one of the problems with healthcare.gov, and I've actually read a lot of documentation on that. It was one of the, I guess for me, it was an incredibly interesting story. But that contract was let out as lowest price technically acceptable. And so when the government puts out a request for proposal, they have evaluation criteria that they put on those RFPs. And depending on that evaluation criteria is kind of what you end up with. So lowest price technically acceptable means your price is the lowest, and you can bear, you meet that, whatever that minimum is, you meet that standard. And so that company, I think it was CGI, who won healthcare.gov, was LPTA, lowest price technically acceptable. They were just good enough to get that job. What ended up happening is they came back around to save that, and they said, you know what, let's throw price to the wind. We have a problem here, it's a crisis, we need to get this up and running. Let's bring in the best of the best, the Googles, and some of the other amazing technology things out there. And so it's not that the government's not capable of executing, it's that the government needs to be, I guess you could say, more willing to spend the money for, you get what you pay for.
They're not buying hammers and tools.
Exactly. It's one thing to buy.
They're not buying commodities, is the better way to say it.
Exactly. It's not a commodity thing. In a lot of ways, and it might sound kind of, I don't know, like I'm patting myself on the back, but software development is kind of an art. I create every day something out of nothing. Bits and bytes get turned into forms and processes and things like that. You just don't find artisans everywhere. And I know that's maybe a stretch to say, but it's not like buying a commodity, for sure. So you get what you pay for. So we talked about all this cybersecurity problems, all this money being spent. The government's going to spin up all these cyber protection teams. Obviously there's millions of people just standing by, ready for the call to go work for the federal government or the commercial industry. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And so, as I have here from Michael Brown, the CEO of Symantec, by 2019, we're going to have a shortfall of cybersecurity experts by 1.5 million people. Cisco thinks that there's going to be a worldwide shortage of security professionals at 1 million. So you're looking at a pretty big gap there of people to positions, and a lot of it has to do with training. You've only really seen in the last, say, 5 years, colleges, universities, trade schools really kind of push towards cybersecurity. And that's a big problem. I mean, we've always had doctors, we've always had nurses, I mean, when I was in college, IT was hot, you know, so they were pumping out system administrators and software developers. But we need the next wave, the next generation of professionals to be cybersecurity professionals, because that's a different breed of people. It's a broader spectrum of skills wrapped up in a package of vigilance that needs to be taught in our educational institutions, which we don't really have yet. It's coming around. And that's what we hope to build with the Midwest Cyber Center of Excellence. So Midwest Cyber Center is a not-for-profit that we just recently started in October. It was basically established because there was a need identified to support the growing cybersecurity and IT needs of Sky Air Force Base. So the idea kind of grew out of one man's mind, Kurt Ardinger, in Belleville, Illinois. But he knew it was a little bit bigger than him. He needed help to kind of get this off the ground. And so he elicited the Leadership Council of Southwestern Illinois, which is a group of business owners all throughout Southwestern Illinois that come together on a monthly basis to try to help drive economic development and solve problems for Southwestern Illinois. And so they came together and basically, through the advisement of Sky Air Force Base, was told, we need an independent study. We need somebody to say, you know, what is the opportunity here to get this off the ground? So they reached out to the St. Louis Regional Chamber and performed a feasibility study of standing up a Cyber Center of Excellence in the St. Louis region. So the key areas here are east and west side of the river, you know. So let's talk a little bit about what Scott brings to the table. I talked about U.S. Transportation Command, and those are the three subordinate commands, or the two subordinate commands to TransCom. We also have the Defense Information Security Agency, who is in charge of cybersecurity for the Department of Defense. And we are actually getting our western headquarters building built right now on base. It's going to be twice as big as the old facility. And so that's there. We have our 375th, which runs the base. We have our Illinois Air National Guard, which has KC-135 tankers that help keep our jets in the air and have performed several missions all over the world over the last 20 years. So we have a lot of infrastructure out there. 13,000 people show up to work every day at Sky Air Force Base. I mean, that's a lot of people trying to get through two little gates every day. And so, on top of the 13,000, like I said, we're standing up 2 cyber protection squadrons. That's going to bring an additional 350 people to the base by the end of 2017. So, a huge area of concern when it comes to cybersecurity, driving, you know, how do we supply that need for that cybersecurity? How do we help DISA get the people they need to do the job? But the nice thing about employing the St. Louis Regional Chamber is that we needed to consider St. Louis, which is an ideal climate for cybersecurity. I mean, this facility, Cortex and T-Rex are fueling the fire for innovation in the Midwest. This is a great time to be in St. Louis from that perspective. We are one of the hottest IT markets in the United States. And so, you know, we're surrounded by AT&T's, CenturyLinks, Charter Communications, and many other large businesses, Stiefel Nicholas, Edward Jones, Ascension Health, Barnes Jewish. You know, so many opportunities here of commercial entities that need support. And I didn't even talk about NGA. I mean, I don't think anybody in this room doesn't know about the discussion, especially if you're from this side of the river, I'm from the other side of the river. You know, we're fighting to bring NGA over to the base. You guys are fighting to keep it in St. Louis, which is definitely something that should be concerned about. But that's another 5,000 to 10,000 jobs, you know, that are high security level, cybersecurity type of jobs. And so there's a ton of people that need cybersecurity folks. So what do? We formed a nonprofit to serve the entire region. This is not just for Sky Air Force Base, this is for everyone. What we would like to do is support all the local military, financial, healthcare, government, and law enforcement agencies and build a better region and drive job growth. And so we have partners that include Southwestern Illinois College, Webster University, my company, which created a non-for-profit kind of wing called the Aegis Strategies Foundation. And then we also got a really awesome contribution from the Logistics Management Institute to prop this up. So we're pretty well funded to get us stuff off the ground. Funded enough that we were able to hire Mr. Tony Bryan, who's over here. We're stealing him away from other nonprofits, and he's actually joining us on Tuesday, and he's going to lead the charge. He's going to be our man in front to get this whole thing off the ground. So what is his mission going to look like? Well, phase one, we're going to start offering cybersecurity certification training. And that's not just for adults, that's not just for college kids. We're going to try to get into the high schools and the grade schools, because there's a thing called the Cyber Patriot Program that kind of starts that learning at an early age and kind of brings that all the way through. So we're trying to hit it at the lower levels and bring it all the way up through the graduate level. And we're also going to be increasing our partnerships with local educational institutes and other entities to try to help that. So, we're looking at ITEN, T-Rex, and Launch Code to help drive this.
Is that your own certification, or is it a national certification you're going to be offering?
So, yes, we're going to be doing a combination. At first, we're looking at just the standard Security Pluses, CISSPs, and GPENs, and things like that. But what we'd like to do, one of the problems that's been kind of presented to us by the Air Force on our work over there is we kind of know what a cyber engineer looks like, but what does a cyber engineer really need to be? And so what they've done is they've thrown all these certs at the wall, and they said, have 5 of these, and we'll call you a cyber engineer. So what we'd like to do is figure out what a cyber engineer is and what are the core skills to get them to be qualified to do the job correctly. So that's going to be kind of part of our mission. But in the interim, we'd like to at least get training to the masses. A lot of the training that I'm talking about is only offered once or twice a year in the St. Louis region. We are not one of those stopping points. We're not Chicago, we're not San Antonio, we're not New York, we're not Los Angeles. It's constantly being offered. So we want to be able to constantly offer that training.
What do you think those jobs will pay?
They usually pay pretty well.
Which means?
Well, I was actually looking at some figures from a couple different sites, even last night, and some people were saying that senior cybersecurity experts will average over $200,000 a year. But just entry-level jobs coming out of college with proper training, you can easily make $50,000 to $60,000 right off the bat. Which is, that's not McDonald's. It's a pretty good living coming around out of college.
We run into a lot of people that are very interested in that, and they've taken classes and they can't find jobs because most companies are like, you don't have enough experience, we don't want you touching our stuff. So how do people actually break into this when there is such a change in the back end of all these sites? I mean, it's not like somebody can just pick up.
Take a drink here. So that's a great question, but it's a question that plagues IT in general. Okay, it's not just cybersecurity. One of the things that we've done at Aegis is we've done a lot of internships to get folks the experience to get them on the contracts. We also look at things like, what are you doing at home? Are you coding? Things like that. How do you break the paradigm of, I need to have 5 years of professional experience to qualify for that job? And so, some of the things we're looking at is how do you do that? How do you break that paradigm? How do you give people the experience, the knowledge? How do you test them to show that they have the skills to be able to do the job? So those are all questions that we're trying to answer through the MWCCOE, but just as a company, Aegis is looking at that. We've kind of broken some paradigms over the last years. We hired 50 people, and I would say we've been incredibly successful at taking people that would not normally be able to do or qualify for a job and prove that they are not only qualified, but probably are going to be some of the best programmers you've ever seen. And it's just an industry problem, and it's just something we have to break the barriers down about. Let's see. So phase 2, we're almost done. We're going to be also doing R&D and entrepreneurial support. So how do we bring in startup companies, people with great ideas about cyber tools and things like that, bring that into the curriculum, bring those to the masses, and more importantly, facilitate strategic innovation across multiple industries. So we want to start fielding think tanks and groups and basically tie in the DoD elements of St. Louis with the commercial elements of St. Louis. Get everybody sitting at the same table, the CIOs, the CTOs, the senior information technology folks together in a room to talk about the threats they face, the issues they're working on, and try to get a common theme, a common standard, a dialogue started in our own way in our St. Louis region to help protect our businesses and our interests. So that's what I have about cybersecurity, Midwest Cyber Center of Excellence. You met Tony, he's a great guy. I think he's going to do a great job. We're funded, we're excited. We're going to really do some amazing things in the next couple of years as we spin this thing up and try to get it self-sustaining. I think it's just a great opportunity. I'm very proud to present it to the region. So in order to meet the described criteria of this event, I had a couple little bullets here at the end. Doing business at Scott Air Force Base, it's not easy. You really have to find somebody that you can trust, and that's not easy. And so that takes time, and you have to develop a relationship with folks out there. The DoD is a totally different world. In commercial industry, you're seeing potentially 20, 30, 40% margins on products and things like that. In the DoD, you're lucky to get a 5% profit on a contract. I mean, it's tough. It's single digits. But it's a rewarding job. And so you have to be willing to invest your time. You have to have patience. Most of all, the biggest thing that I've been seeing is you have to be mindful of the security clearance requirements. If you're a startup and you've outsourced all your development to India, I can't use your software, I'm sorry. As great as it could be, it's not going to be, I can't put that on a DoD system. So you have to kind of think through those things. If you're not an American citizen, it's going to be tough. There's ways around it, but it takes a lot of time and energy. And so that's just something that you have to be mindful of. And I'm not saying that's a great thing, it's just a fact. And so you want to also research government acquisition. It's a whole different world. You don't just walk up to the government and say, I got a great idea and it's going to cost you $10.99, and they say, here's my credit card, let me have that. It's a process. It takes several months to get something purchased. You have to compete against thousands of companies. You have to have the vehicle. You have to qualify for the contract vehicle to be able to even put a bid on it. And so it's just a whole different environment that you have to learn, and it's tough. But that's the whole part of building a relationship with a company like mine, to be able to break through that. And then finally, there's plenty of industry days. So if you want to get familiar with what we're doing out at Scott, we have an annual industry day. We have a lot of other types of industry days where you can come out and just kind of get familiar with the climate, the people, see the faces and the names, and understand things. So I would recommend that as a great first step if you're interested in doing business.
And if I can, just a couple of weeks ago at one of these events, I met someone from an organization called STL GovTech. Okay. And they work with companies who want to contract with the government, whether local or federal. I think it's probably just stlgovtech.org. Yep. So, I mean, if you're interested, I mean, that's a source of some good resources.
There you go. Other than that, no other questions? Appreciate your guys' time. Just trying to take the mic quick. Thank you.
Thank you so much. As we wrap up, I wanted to